Hi guys, Kelly here, and I just want to share with you some of my recent reads. And all the ones I'm going to share with you are either middle grade or what I would call a younger YA or teen kind of books, because if you've been watching my recent reads, I'm reading a lot of more like middle grade or nostalgic reads this month. So it just happens to be this group is pretty much all that. The first book is Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli. This is from the perspective of a boy named Leo who is just starting his 11th grade year, and at the beginning of the school year he sees that there is a new girl in school named Stargirl. Now she has been living in the area but has been homeschooled her whole life, so this is her first experience at public school, and she's a bit of a individual, so she comes to school in kind of different outfits that might be kind of more costume like or just different than what the average kid wears. She carries her ukulele around and randomly sings to everybody on their birthday and just kind of follows her own drummer. And so it's a little bit of a story about nonconformity and how Leo is falling for Stargirl and how that he deals with that in the realm of like, does he want to fit in with everybody else, or does he want to be with somebody like Stargirl that he really enjoys being around? And I ended up giving this 3 stars, I believe. I can't remember if it was 3 or 3.5, but it was definitely like middle of the road for me, around a 3-star read. And the reason for that, a lot of people really love this as one of their favorite, is that I just didn't quite connect with it as much as I was hoping to. I was hoping to really love this, and I liked the message of like being yourself, being who you are, accepting other people for who they are. Like, I know that's an important message. The book just didn't really entertain me or keep me focused on it. Like, even I read this like a week ago, and I had to spend like a while before this trying to remember the characters and remember what I liked or didn't like about it, because it is like almost completely gone from my head in the 1 week. It just felt more of a generic story, which is kind of ironic since it's a story about nonconformity. But anyways, I just didn't really like get moved by it. I did like the character of Stargirl. I loved how she had a pet rat, and that was one of her like idiosyncrasies, because when we were kids, we had pet rats, and I know when I tell people that, they think that's really weird, but rats are actually one of the best rodents to have, because they are very friendly, and like Stargirl's rats, they'll like sit on your shoulder, they'll hang out with you, they don't bite. So that part of it I really loved. I loved that she had a pet rat, and I loved that she was herself and everything, but there was just, it just didn't really connect to me. And one of the things that bugged me was that I was looking for this in the middle grade, like tween section at the library, and then I looked it up, and it turns out this is actually young adult, and they are in 11th grade, so I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense that it would be in the teen section. But the whole time I was reading this, I kept having to remind myself that they were, you know, like probably, what would that be, 16, 17 years old, because it really read like they were more like 7th, 8th graders. And like constantly, like every time, like almost every chapter, I have to like remind myself, because everybody was just acting more like a middle schooler, where you're really just figuring out how to interact with each other instead of being more of a later high school age. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but it really did not feel like 11th graders. A lot of their actions were like, they were really obsessed with this one man who owned a lot of like fossils, and they would like go to his house to listen to him talk, which is fine, but like they would wear necklaces with fossils and stuff like that, and I just see that as something more like being part of a group like that, as more like something middle schoolers would do than 11th graders. But I don't know, for some reason I just could not connect this as being like an older teen book. It just won't stay with me. It is not one of my favorites, but I do think it has a good message, and I think in terms of actually who would benefit from this, I think that middle schoolers would benefit from reading this book, because they are at the time of trying to discover who they are and realizing that it's okay to be different. And then the next kind of middle of the road book was The First Horror by R.L. Stine. This is the first in like a trilogy of his about 99 Fear Street, which is a like evil house. And this is about 2 twins. They are fraternal twins, and they have just moved to this town with their family to, where does this take place? Shadyside, is that where Fear Street is? And they move into this house that has been empty since it was built in the 60s, 99 Fear Street, and they don't know about all the stories about this house, but crazy things start happening as soon as they move into this house. And they start to realize, as they get to know people in the town, that some bad stuff happened at this house when it was being built and before, and that they are basically being haunted by their house. And I read this book because I had tried an R.L. Stine book a few weeks ago as kind of like a nostalgic thing, because I read tons of his books when I was like 6th to 9th grade. So I just wanted to like kind of have that nostalgia. And the last one I tried to read, I DNF'd. So I picked this one up because it gets some of the better reviews of his Fear Street books, so I thought it'd be better. And I did really like it. I gave it 3 stars. And I know that seems like middle of the road, because the thing is, I really enjoyed reading this book. I thought it was kind of fun, but it definitely was not quality literature. Like, when I was actually like reading it, the dialogue is like really bad, and a lot of the writing is pretty poor. So I can't like give it a 4 or 5 stars. I don't think technically, like, it just does not have the quality, but it was really fun to read. Like, some really messed up stuff happens in this house, and I think if you wanted to like kind of have that nostalgia and read a book with like your middle schooler or early teen, that this would be a fun one if they were into horror, because it's got enough like little like scary and mysterious things that it would be fun for that age, but it isn't like to the point of an adult horror, you know? So like for me, as somebody that doesn't read adult horror, this was scary enough for me. Like, it wasn't like, I wasn't scared, but I don't like to be scared. So it was just enough like intensity and mystery of like what's going on in this house to like keep me interested. So I did find this a lot of fun. Even though I found that one a lot of fun, I do not think I'm going to keep reading the R.L. Stine books. I just wanted to read one that I enjoyed better than the one I didn't finish. But I don't think that I'm going to go back to that place and time where I really enjoy them. But I definitely think that I have justified the fact that I enjoyed them as a kid. And then my next book is Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech, which this is a Newbery Award winner, so I thought, okay, this is going to be a really quality book. I'm excited to read it, and I did really enjoy it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. This is about a girl named Salamanca, or it goes by Sal, and she is 13 years old, and about a year and a half before the start of this book, her mother left the family, and at this point, she and her grandparents have decided to take a trip across the country to the last place they heard, because her mom sent like postcards along her trip as she left, and so they kind of are following the path her mom took and kind of want to reach the place where they last heard from her. And on this travel time, we're, you know, getting to know her and her grandparents. We're learning a little bit about her life during that year and a half, and then also about her life with her mom. At the same time that her grandparents have asked Sal to tell them a story while they're traveling to just kind of make the drive more interesting. So she starts telling a story about a girl that she has met during that time that her mom has been missing, and there's kind of like a mystery revolving around this girl Phoebe and her family. And so it's kind of like a story within a story. So we're hearing about Sal and her past at the same time as she's telling this story about Phoebe and Phoebe's family. And I gave this 4 instead of 5 because I didn't really feel connected at the beginning. Like, I was feeling very disconnected from the narrative and was like, I'm enjoying this all right, but I wasn't like really invested until about halfway through, and then something like switched in me that like suddenly I was like really connected to Sal and her grandparents especially, and wanted to know what was going to happen to them. I really wanted to find out what was happening with her friend Phoebe, and so about the halfway point it switched for me, and then I was like hooked the rest of the book. The ending really touched me. I mean, I predicted basically everything, but this is like a children's book, so like I didn't expect to be surprised by the ending, but it was really touching, and I just really was moved by the ending of the book, and so I really did enjoy this, and I will be getting my own copy to share with my kids when they get of the age to be able to read it. But I would recommend this if you want something that is easy to read and something that would be kind of like a piece of childhood life and how a kid would see the world. And I think that Sal's a really good storyteller, so I enjoyed that element. And then the next book was Kira Kira by Cynthia Kadohata. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, sorry. And this is also a Newbery Award winner, so I wanted to check it out. And I ended up giving this one 4 stars as well. And this one, in a similar way, I enjoyed the whole middle section of this book. So the first like beginning, it was taking me a little bit to get into it, and then I really enjoyed the middle, and then the ending didn't really, I don't think, moved me as much as most people. So basically what this story is about is Kira Kira is means glittering, I believe, and shining in Japanese. And it's about two Japanese American girls who are sisters, and they have to move from this small town farm that they've lived most of their life to a small apartment and I think they're in the south, in like Georgia, yeah, the deep south of Georgia, where there are not a lot of Japanese people in that area, and the people in the south. This is taking place, I can't remember what time period this is, 50s maybe, and so the people are pretty, in the south, are pretty prejudiced against the Japanese Americans and aren't really including them into the community. So the older sister's kind of teaching the younger sister that, like, people are going to see you differently here, and they might not accept you and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of lessons about being an outsider in the community. There is a lot in this book about unfair work conditions, because at the time both of her parents are working in factories in the like chicken industry. So like one of her parents works with like eggs, and then the other one works in the factory where they actually like dismantle chickens to prepare for the grocery stores. So they both work in the chicken industry, and it's like all those unfair work conditions that would have been happening at this time period, and like the unions and like how that is working, and just like struggles in this family. And so when I say I really enjoyed the middle part of this book, it was heartbreaking, but the middle part was where we really got to like see them struggling in their day-to-day life. And I know that sounds sad, that's the part I enjoyed, but like I think it's so important for kids literature to show that like there are a lot of hardships that people have to go through in this world, and what a family has to do to stick together, what a family has to do to make money, to support themselves, to go for the dream that they have. Like their main dream is to have like a house, and like how much work these parents have to do just to get them into a small home is amazing. And just like the way it can rip a family apart, the things that are happening that are beyond their control. And that was just really moving, and it's sad, but at the same time I think it's an important read. And I wasn't exactly as attached to the ending as most people are. Like if you look through Goodreads, everybody's like, oh, the ending crushed me and all this stuff, but for some reason I was a little detached by the ending. That's probably just me. I'm probably just an ice queen. But what really gets me in this book is all the struggles of the family. So I still think it is an amazing book, and that it is important for kids to read. And I think it's one that adults would be able to connect with too, because we would understand those struggles. Because this whole time, you know, I think it's great, this book, because it's a kid's book, is really told from, now I'm forgetting, Katie, that's the main character, it's from her perspective, and we're seeing these struggles that her family's going through from a child's perspective. So it's simplified, but as an adult I can read into it and like see how much her parents really are having to go through in order to support their family. And it is heartbreaking as a parent, and like knowing you want to provide for your family and take care of them and might not have the means to. So I do think it's an important book for all ages. Okay, so guys, it is about 5 hours later. I got pulled away from making my video, and I still had one more book I want to talk about. So I know the lighting has changed. I think I was wearing a scarf earlier, but whatever, you know. I'm going to talk about the last book. And the last book is George by Alex Gino. And I gave this one 4.5 stars. It was very close to being 5 stars. I almost rated it 5 stars, and I think I did on Goodreads, but there was just one little thing that bothered me. But otherwise, I thought this was an excellent book, and like adored it. Will be buying my own copy to share with my kids when they get older. And this is a story about George, who, when people look at George, they see a young boy in 4th grade. But George knows that she's a girl. And at this time, their 4th grade class is reading Charlotte's Web, and they're going to put on the play, and George really wants to be Charlotte, which is a girl's role. And so George wants to audition for the traditionally girl's role. And we follow George's kind of story, dealing with those feelings that she's having inside, also trying to tell her family and friends, and like wanting to audition for something that, you know, she's being told that she can't be, even though that's what she's like, I know I'm a girl and I can play this part and I can be the best at it. And so we're following a lot of things like that in this story. It's very short, so it's easy to get through, but I think this is a very important book because it's a story we don't hear a lot about, the time when kids are discovering who they are if they are trans. And I think it's important that this is written on an elementary level. Like, it's not written like an adult writing about a child, but like it sounds like an adult. Like this, it really does feel like it's written for an upper elementary audience or middle grade audience. I also just thought that like the relationships in this were really sweet. Like the characters were sweet. Like I loved George. I loved being in George's head. I love George's best friend, Kelly. I mean, first of all, she's got the best name. And Kelly is just a great best friend. And I liked how they were very individual people and we got to learn their personalities. So it wasn't just about like the topic. It was really just about two friends as well and about what's going on at school and all that. So I just thought I loved it. It was a heartwarming book. It definitely has a very positive spin to it. And I think that is because it's for elementary students. So even though we do see the struggles that George is going through by always being called a boy and saying you're going to be a nice young man someday and all this stuff that she doesn't like hearing, we hear those struggles, but then overall it's a very positive book, which I think is important because it is written for an elementary audience who might be just approaching these topics for the first time. So the reason I ended up deciding to only give it 4.5 instead of 5 is there's one thing that kind of bothered me in this, and that was like the focus on gender norms and stereotypes. And my assumption is, I didn't like read into this about the author, but my assumption is that Alex wanted to kind of, because it's for kids, they wanted to like focus on like things that kids are already familiar with. So like that boys like this and girls like this, and splitting up the boys and girls into different sections and all that stuff. Like I think that the author was using that to just be on the same level with kids. But I also don't think that's something that we should be perpetuating with kids, that boys and girls should be separated, that only girls are going to like this certain type of thing, that girls are the ones that like clothing and makeup and books about pigs and spiders or whatever, and that boys are the ones that always like sports and or act rude and all these things. I don't like when we separate kids and tell them they have to be a certain way, even if they're not trans. Like, just kids in general. Like, I don't think that we should be putting them into groups based on their gender. It just is something that bothers me personally, and something that as a parent I have seen more and more and more. Like, I always knew, you know, that there's a lot of gender stereotyping in our country, but especially being a parent of two young girls, I see it all the time. Like, for example, my daughter is 4. When she was in dance class from like about 2 years old to 3 years old, they always like did this one thing in class where they would get a bear and they would dance with the bear. And they had boy bears and girl bears. So if you were a girl, you got a brown bear with a tutu, and if you were a boy, you got a panda bear. Well, my daughter Bernadette just really wanted the panda bear, and every single week her teacher took the panda bear out of her hands and handed her the girl bear. And I'm like, she's 2. Let her have the panda bear. Why does it matter? Like, and so it's just like that we are like instilling these norms on kids that really are not necessary. Why does it matter if the girl wants the bear without a tutu? And why would it matter if a boy was in the class if he wanted the bear with a tutu? Why does it matter? And so those kind of, I know like I get really passionate about this. It just like, it really bothers me when we make assumptions about kids because of their gender, and or adults, but because this is a kid's book, I'm talking about kids. But like, my daughter gets it all the time. She loves construction vehicles. I had a woman at the park the other day. She went up to a little boy that had a truck, and my daughter wanted to play with him and his construction vehicle and trucks and stuff, and the mom's like, oh, you know, she likes to play with boy toys, does she? And I'm like, no, she likes to play with toys. She's a kid that likes construction vehicles. They're toys. They are not boy toys. So, sorry, get off my soapbox now. So that was the reason why I took this down a half star. And like I said, I think I understand why the author's doing it, trying to be on the level, but why should that be what kids hear, and why should it be in books? And one more thing about this book that didn't take down a star for me, but I just want to let you know, because I I feel like I'm known as that person that talks about when a book spoils another book, because it's a big pet peeve of mine. And it didn't bother me in this book because I have read Charlotte's Web, but they do talk in detail about the ending of Charlotte's Web. So if you are reading this with your kids, make sure they have read Charlotte's Web before they read George, or they will be spoiled. Same as if you're an adult that doesn't know. I mean, I feel like if you made it to adulthood, you've probably heard the ending of Charlotte's Web, but I feel like I'm known for telling you if a book spoils another book, so I just wanted to mention that. So that is it. That is my books that I have read recently. If you've read any of these and want to discuss them down below, I'd love to hear from you, and I'm excited to talk to you next time. Bye.